All right, gents, we're going to go through a discussion question that came up, which is how do I know if I'm ready? How do I know if I'm ready for buds? And I'm going to give you my personal perspective on this and my thoughts on what I think that you should be at, your scores, your numbers, your fitness level before you ship out and show up at buds to become a SEAL. So I'm going to give you my numbers at the end of this and tell you exactly what I think you should be doing, things you should be preparing for by the time you get to buds. But before that, let's talk about buds. So it's 6 months long, and it's the job interview. It's the job interview to become a Navy SEAL. Now, you don't get your trident after the end of 6 months. You still have to go through SQT. However, the physical demands of buds are extremely high. Also, the mindset. You have to be mentally in the game. You have to be mentally tough. You have to have grit. You have to have character. There's a lot that you have to prepare for. Okay, so think about first phase. You roll into first phase right out of buds prep. Buds prep is designed to get you ready for buds. Does it actually prepare you for buds? Well, it's debatable, but you want to think of buds prep as sort of a trial run at first phase, giving you a little taste of what it might be like at first phase. However, I wouldn't rely on buds prep to prepare you for the selection pipeline. It's really designed to get guys back in shape after they lose shape after going through boot camp, right? And getting you back in shape, also teaching you how to run in the sand, getting your body back in tune before you start up first phase. Okay. But don't think of buds prep as like the course you go through to prepare you for selection. It's not that long, and you need to be preparing before you actually show up to buds. So think about that first. Is buds prep is designed to get you to the level of fitness you were at prior to shipping out to boot camp for the enlisted guys. All right. So let's just have that in our back pocket and think about that for a little bit. Okay. The PST. If you have a passing PST and you go to the recruiter and you show them your PST and you pass and you ship out without preparing for the pipeline, preparing for the actual evolutions of buds, then a lot of times you're just not going to be ready. You're going to show up and say, "Hey, here I am, training me to be a Navy SEAL," and they're going to say, "Okay, we're going to put you through the job interview, which is buds, and see if you have what it takes." Okay, and just because you're a good dude and you have a never quit mindset doesn't mean you're going to make it through buds. If you don't prepare physically and mentally, then you just won't make it. You might be the best guy in the world, but if you haven't put in the work beforehand, it doesn't matter how good you are. There's a standard, and the standards will always be there. And so you need to prepare for them, right? If you go to any job interview and you don't prepare for it, you're going to fail. It's very competitive, right? It's the same thing for buds. This isn't the exact numbers, but out of 100 guys, the top 20 make it. So you need to be in the top 20. So if every 100 guy that show up has a passing PST and a never quit mindset, quote unquote, well, you got to be different than them, right? You need to be in the top 20% because average is about 20 guys move on for every 100 guys that show up to buds. That's what it is. Okay. Sometimes it's 70% attrition rate, sometimes 80, right? Somewhere around there. Sometimes it's even higher than that, the attrition rate. So set yourself up for success. And how can I be ready in that top 20% instead of the bottom 80, which is what most people are when they arrive at buds? It's the hardest pipeline to get through. So why would you not prepare for it? Don't just think about the PST, because when you get to buds, they don't care about that anymore. Really, they have a whole new set of standards that they're going to put you through. So that's what you train for, really. The PST, we need to get that behind you. But I wouldn't go and say, "Hey, recruiter, I've got my PST. I'm ready to ship out to buds." You go through that and you ship out and you realize you're in over your head. That happens to way too many guys. Let's talk about it. Here's my perspective. So I was training 2005, 2006. I didn't have very many resources, but I did a lot of things. I went through courses. I trained myself. I did a lot of very challenging things to prepare myself for buds. I went through and I made it, became a Navy SEAL. I spent time as an operator, and then I went to buds and spent 4 years there. After I got out of buds, I became a coach, helping guys prepare for buds, helping guys become physically ready and mentally ready for the rigors of the hardest pipeline there is. So I know what it takes, and I have some numbers that I want you guys to think about and some physical standards to shoot for, so that when you arrive at selection, you're confident and you're capable. You're ready to perform. You're not just showing up and saying, "Hey, let's go try this thing out." Right? Let's not do that. Let's show up and be ready to perform. If this is what you want to do, go all the way. If you don't want it, then don't show up. Okay? There's too many guys that do that and they arrive they're unprepared, or they're just not in, or they're 95% committed and that 5% doubt grows, be 100% all in. If you have doubts, then just don't, right? If you have a way out, then just don't. You need to go 100% committed to this, which means now we train. The most important time of your life is between now and when you start buds, when you start first phase, right now, between now and then, because these are the days that you can't take back. Once you get there, it's game on. It's like when you play sports and you show up to game day. Well, you had training time, you had preparation time before game day, right? And then you show up to game day and it's full send, it's ready to go. That's how it is at buds. It's not like we show up there and say, okay, well, we'll give it my best shot. No, you show up ready to survive. No, don't just show up ready to survive. You show up ready to win. You show up ready to perform. Too many guys show up ready just wanting to survive. See if I can make it. See if I can hang with them. All right, that's not the right mindset to have. Show up and be ready to perform. That the lens that the instructors have, they're looking through and they're seeing everybody. They're saying, hey, do I want this guy in my platoon? When I go back to the platoons after my time at instructor duty, do I want this guy in my platoon as a new guy? They want to stack their platoon with solid dudes, with guys that are ready to perform, not bottom of the barrel guys. So show up and be ready to perform. Also, when you're under the boat and log, it is ruthless. It's not ruthless. It's not the instructors that make guys quit. It's guys within your own boat crew. You have to be ready to perform. You can't be the bottom guy. All right, so let's talk about it. First phase is challenging. Not only do you have physical standards you need to pass, there's mental things you have to overcome. The cold water, surf torture, there's drown proofing, there's hell week. There's a lot that goes into it. And that's why there's very high attrition rate early on in buds in that first 4 to 5 weeks because of these challenges. Okay, so we got to prepare you for that. Now, within buds first phase, there's timed evolution to start off day one of first phase, 4-mile time run. Okay, you got to be ready for those. The mileage that you're going to be running in first phases is pretty darn high, and a lot of guys arrive and they're just unprepared for that. We'll talk about the running mileage in a minute, but I want you to think about preparing yourself for the running mileage, preparing yourself for the rucking, for the yo course, for the swims that you're going to have to do, so that when you arrive, you're ready to perform on these timed evolutions. Now, the thing that gets most guys is boats and logs, especially running with boat on head. We have to prepare you physically for that. You have to be strong. You have to have bulletproof legs, strong in your upper body, mobility and stability. You need to be bulletproof because when you go underneath that boat, it's full send. It's the hardest thing you're ever going to do, more than likely, is running with boat. More guys quit under the boat. Then there's logs. You have to be strong for the logs as well. But it's the boats that gets most guys running boat. That is what it is. We got to prepare you for that. Don't show up and be like, well, I'm 130 pounds. I can run like the wind. And then you get under a boat and you just collapse. Okay, you have to be that hybrid athlete. You have to be ready to do everything. You have to be great across the board. Don't just have one strength. Too many guys rely on what they did before. I was a collegiate swimmer, right? I was an athlete in high school. That's cool. But does that mean you're ready for buds? No, it just means you have a leg up in that certain area. You need to be great across the board. It's like a triathlete. They're good in 3 disciplines. Well, in buds, going through buds, you have to be great across the board in everything, which means endurance, speed, strength, power, and of course, you have to just be an all-around solid dude, just bulletproof to be able to face these things. It's not going to be at the best environments either, right? Because you're going to be cold, wet, and sandy. So you're not under the easiest circumstance with all of these challenges. So you want to arrive and be ready to perform, ready to win, okay? Showing up and being competitive. It is extremely competitive. Don't show up and say, hey, I have a passing PST, train me to be a SEAL. That's not how it works. You show up and be ready to perform. There's no excuses to show up and be weak. Don't jump the gun. Most guys, they say, hey, I passed a PST. That means I can get a contract and go to buds. I can become a Navy SEAL. And they ship out and they're unprepared. Don't be that guy. Too many times it happens. Okay, give yourself time. If it takes you 3 years to train up, then give yourself that time. I work with guys and coach and mentor them to help them get to these numbers that I'm going to go through in a minute. And I just want you to set your ego aside and say, how badly do I want this? Do I want this so bad that I want to ship out early and just say, I'm going to go full send with a never quit mindset and a passing PST and expect myself to make it, right? Set your ego aside and say, what are they going to have me do during the job interview? Have I ever done this before? Do I even know if I can pass their 4-mile time run? Do I even know if I can swim 2 miles? Have I ever climbed a rope? Do I have the strength to lift weight over my head? Am I weak? Can I ruck with 45 pounds? Do I have the ability to run 30, 40, even 50 miles of running per week? right? These questions you need to ask yourself, because if you've never done it before, how do you think that's going to go when you're under pressure, when you're cold, wet, and sandy, right? It's going to be a lot. Like, the learning curve is extremely steep. So that's why we train. That's how I help guys and prepare you, because I've seen too many good dudes show up at buds and not make it. Don't be that guy. Okay. Find your weakness. That's what we do. We find your weaknesses and we crush them. We make them strengths. And then we find your strengths and we hammer them even harder to make it so you're in the top 10, 15, 20% of your class. That is the mindset to be in. Train like an operator. You train like a professional now. Think about a pro athlete. They're not just going to think about how can I survive game day. No, they're going to think about how they can hone their body in training camps and preparation, and coaches and mentors, people to help them prepare so that when they get to game day, they can win. It's about winning. It's not about just showing up and surviving. So erase that mindset. And the SEAL mindset is this, is you show up and win every time. We have to win. There is no second chance. There is no second place. It is only on top. That is the mindset you need to have. Okay. You have to have the bulldog mindset and the body to go with it. All right. So let's talk about second phase. So you're rolling out of first phase, go through all that physical stuff. In second phase, the standards get even faster. 4-mile time runs get faster. 2-mile swims get faster. You have the added pressure of pool week and pool comp and all that good stuff with the tread. You have a lot more expectations. You have to be mentally in the game. You have to learn very, very quickly in second phase. You can't be a dumb Navy SEAL. It doesn't happen. That's why it's very challenging to get through the whole pipeline, because you can't just be a physical stud. You have to also be mentally in the game. It's a thinking man's game. All right. So think about that and prepare your mind. Don't just be a guy who can lift a bunch of weight and run, but who doesn't know how to do anything else mentally. It's all about being a thinking shooter. That's the type of guys that need to be in the SEAL teams. So second phase, all the timed evolutions get faster. You're ruck running a lot. You're doing a lot of physical things on top of the diving that you're doing. Timed evolutions are just part of your week, right? And the timed evolutions get faster. Like I said, third phase happens. All the evolutions you do, you're doing it with kits. You're basically wearing 15 to 20 pounds on your body while you do timed evolutions, while you do the O course. Okay. All the timed evolutions get faster. You're not running with kit for a 4-mile run, but your conditioning runs, everywhere you go, you're running with kit. On the island, on San Clemente, everything you do is with kit on. Your chow PTs, rope climbing, all that is with kit. You're doing ruck running. You're doing a long run out on the island. There's tested evolutions. Again, everything gets faster. 4-mile time run is still the standard, and you have to get faster on that. Okay. Everything gets faster each and every phase. So you have 3 phases to make it through. And then everything gets mentally harder as well, because you have to be in the game for land navigation. And then now you have live ammunition and explosives you're working with. So there's a lot more at stake. So during the 6 months of buds, it's a job interview, and they're looking for guys that they want to make sure are the right dudes to become Navy SEALs, the right men and women to become the next operators. That's what happens. So you want to be, once again, in that top 20%. So we train you. Mindset should be this: let's get to third phase timed evolution standards before you even ship to buds. That's how I help guys train, is because if you already are at that point, you can show up to first phase and you're ready to do whatever is asked of you. Remember, there's a lot of pressure put on you in first phase to perform. There's tested evolutions. There's drown proofing. There's underwater swims. You're cold, wet, and sandy. There's Hell Week. There's boats and logs. There's a lot that happens in first phase. So if you show up and you're ready to perform to third phase standards, you'll be way ahead of everybody else. Okay. All right. So let's talk about SQT. Once you finish buds, it's graduate on a Friday. SQT starts Monday. There's not really much of a gap unless you're going over a holiday. And then SQT is 6 months. Now everything gets even more challenging, because yes, you still have things you need to perform physically. There's still evolutions they're going to put you through, but now the dives get harder. Everything gets harder. And now it's all about your mindset. It's all about being in the game. It's all about performing and becoming a operator before you actually get pinned. Okay. That's where really a lot of the SEAL training happens in SQT. Everybody fixates on buds. That's where the limelight is on. Then SQT, man, 6 months of solid SEAL training where you have a SEAL cadre. And they're going to be teaching you on multiple disciplines, preparing you with the latest in tactics, the latest in what they do, the best of the best, training you to prepare you so that you can become a new operator, a brand new guy. ready to perform once you show up at your SEAL platoon. So there's BUD/S 6 months, and then you have SQT for 6 months. That's what happens. So I want you guys to get that in your head. It's not just let me fixate on BUD/S, but there is actual SQT that comes right after that you got to be focused on. All right, let's hit some numbers. So 4 mile time run. Let's get you guys sub 28 minutes. Now, really the best number to be thinking about with 4 mile time runs is 27. 27-minute 4 mile runs. Because remember this, when you get to BUD/S, those 4 mile time runs are in boots and pants on the sand. And so if you're barely passing these, then you're going to have an even harder time when you're in the elements or you're cold or you're sandy and you're running this. So let's focus on at least sub 28 minutes on your 4 mile run. Best case scenario is 27-minute 4 mile runs. That's where you want to be at with that. Now, running mileage, everybody asks about this. Some guys are saying, should I be running 50 miles of running per week or not? Here's the deal. It takes some time to build mileage. A good foundation to build to is 20 to 25 per week for a duration, potentially months before you would ship. Now, we do want to get you to that 30 to 35, even 40 miles of running per week before you would ship. And that's what I help guys do, is get to this high mileage safely so that you can perform when you get there, because really it's a running man's game. Most of the pipelines are this way. If you lack endurance, you can't ruck, you can't run, you're not going to make it through the pipeline. So your foundation must be running. If you're running 10 to 15 miles per week and then you go to BUD/S, more than likely you're not prepared and your body is just going to not handle the mileage. It's not going to handle the pounding of the boat on your head. It's not going to handle that very well. That's why guys get a lot of injuries in BUD/S, because their body just wasn't prepared. Other guys, they put a bunch of mileage on themselves right before selection and they get shin splints or they get all these injuries, and then they go to BUD/S and they still are injured. Right? So don't let that happen to you either. So progression in running, if you're running 10 miles of running per week right now, that's great. Let's build. Okay. Build your mileage is the biggest thing. Let's get your running up to that 20 to 25 per week for duration. And then we can progress from there to this 30 to 35, even 40 miles running per week safely. Ruck running, 15% of your body weight is a good point to start at. Then we build, and 30 is kind of the standard for the first 12 to 15 weeks. And then we up it to 45 pounds. And then that's really the standard, 45-pound ruck running. During SOAS, the officer selection, they do a 9-mile ruck with 45 pounds. It's a run. You want to be prepared for this. During second and third phase and beyond, it's with 45 pounds. Don't get fixated on this like 50, 60, 70, 100-pound rucking. Let's focus on 45 pounds because that's what they're going to ruck run during phase on the soft sand. So be ready for that. So we want to build your rucking. That rucking mileage is built into that 20 to 25 foundation. Okay. Don't be 25 miles of running per week and then 10 miles of rucking on top of that. It needs to be built into that. That's what we do. But that's what you want to think about in your rucking. Can you do this? Not only is it going to build your body, but it's going to build your mind. Man, rucking is one of the best things you can do to build your mindset. Get out there and ruck in the soft sand, ruck on trails, hike with a ruck. You don't always have to be sprinting everywhere. Put on the weight and then go hiking in the mountains. It's one of the best things you can do. But we want to build this ruck as well, because that's going to build your grit. It's going to build your body, build your legs for what's to come. Okay, so we got the mileage, we got your 4-mile time run, we got the rucking. We'll talk about the PST at the end. It deserves a little bit of conversation, but not the limelight here. During phase, you're going to be running with a boat on your head during first phase. A lot of that is going to be, you got to be strong with your legs. You need to have the endurance and you need to have everything tied together, which really is going to be lunges, making sure you can lunge. So we want to build this in. For most guys, what we do is we do lunges with weight. We do lunges with a sandbag. We do lunges with a weight vest, building out your body's capability to lunge for a long duration. That is huge. That is so important to build those legs. Make bulletproof legs by lunging. So that's something you want to think about as tying everything together. All right, swims. We'll hit the CSS without fins later. First phase, actually BUD/S prep, you'll get a base swim in. You'll get to learn how to do that, but really hit the ground running in first phase with 2 miles, 2 nautical mile swims. If you've never swam in the open water, in the ocean, if you've never swam 2 miles before, that's what we do. We build to those 1 mile first, 1 nautical mile, then 2 nautical miles, building you out with fins. in the pool, and then eventually we go to the open water. So you know that you can do this instead of waiting to get there and saying, all right, now I'm tested on this 2 mile swim that I don't even know if I can do. When you get out in the open water, you have to learn how to guide. You got a swim buddy who might be slower than you, right? You're cold. You had to get past the surf just to get to the starting buoy. So there's a lot going on, the pressure of passing the swim. So if you know that you already can pass the swim, goal is sub 70 minutes for a 2 nautical mile, then you'll be ready to go when it comes time for the swims in first phase. 1 mile goal time is sub 30 minutes with fins. 2 nautical miles is sub 70 minutes with fins. This is side stroke with fins. Those are the numbers we want to start building to. Don't worry about the 5 miler, just worry about the 2 mile. 2 nautical miles. Now, open water is important. I get guys in the water, we train them in the open water. I also want you to do this safely. I can get you in the open water. We can train you for this, but don't let the first time you swim in the open water or the ocean be at buds. Do this beforehand so you know that you can perform. Okay. So that's swimming. We'll talk about CSS without fins or the PST later. Rope climbs. So the obstacle course gets a lot of guys, and it's kind of the silent killer, really, is if you can't climb, if you lack arm strength, then you won't make it. So we want to build your grip strength. We do a lot of this in training, building our grip strength so that when you get on the O course, you're ready to perform. You're ready to do the O course without falling off something and failing. Guys don't even class up sometimes because they lack the skill sets to do the obstacle course. So we learn how to do the obstacle course and climb ropes with using our legs and our arms. If you just use your arms for everything, you're going to burn yourself out. So we learn the foot lock 2 different ways to make sure that you can climb the rope. Got to be good at the O course. Now, calisthenics. Let's talk about that when it comes to the O course. The amount of calisthenics you're going to do in buds, especially first phase, is going to be very, very high. You're going to do a ton of reps. So if you're just focused on perfect form, know that at some point your perfect form goes out the window. So we focus on very perfect form for the PST, but then it's about volume. It's about all these different types of calisthenics you can do to build body mastery, tie everything together. And this is going to help you out during the O course. Okay. So having body mastery, being able to climb, having really strong grip strength, having the ability to do pull-ups, holding your strength, pulling yourself up, going over the rope climb, going over the cargo net, all that, the spider wall, that's all going to be tied into your ability to do calisthenics. And that's super important. So don't neglect your calisthenics. Make sure you're doing those. We build those into all of our training programs is a lot of calisthenics. And that's what a lot of guys fixate on too, just doing calisthenics. We'll talk about strength here in a second. But for the O course, it's all about going to be your body weight. Let's get you ready to do 8-count bodybuilders. Let's do mountain climbers. Let's get you doing pull-ups. We're doing push-ups, all that stuff, dips to help you prepare. Okay, building your body, tying everything together. Now, strength. If you guys are not used to lifting weight, you don't need to become power lifters, weightlifters, bodybuilders, any of that, but you do need to have strength. We build out front squat, deadlift, back squat. We even learn power cleaning and some kettlebell snatch so that guys are ready to build that power to get that boat up and get it overhead. Also, front squat. A lot of the stuff you do during selection and the teams is in the front of your body. You want to learn the proper front rack position in the front squat, build our legs so that we have strong, bulletproof legs to lift, to do squats. You're going to be doing squats with the log. You're going to be doing overhead presses, overhead squats with the boat. There is strength that is required. And if you lack strength, if you're 140 pounds with zero ability to lift weight overhead, you're not going to make it. You have to think about being a hybrid athlete, being great across the board. So don't just neglect your strength. Okay. I don't need you to focus on a 1 rep max, but we do need to build your body weight front squat, right? What is your body weight? Let's get you to a 1.5, 3 rep max on your front squat. Let's get you to building out your deadlift so that you're strong to lift things off the ground, lifting the boat off the ground, building that power. So you have the body awareness and you have the ability to lift correctly. Okay. So don't neglect that. And that's what we build into training is the strength piece, because guys miss out on that. And then they get to buds and they realize I needed to be strong as well as have the endurance. It's not just running. It's also strength. We're not going to just fixate on the strength piece. It's more of a third skill, I would say, behind the endurance and speed. But we do want to have some strength. We need to have strength because once you go into first phase, you realize boats and logs require strength, and you want to have strength to pull your body weight up. So that's important. I'm not going to give you more specifics on the weights and what are some numbers to hit. We do that in our training program, but I want you to think about this. Overhead stability and mobility is one of the most important things you can do for your strength. Don't neglect that. If your military press is barely 115 pounds for 3 reps overhead, you got to build it out. You need to be able to lift weight overhead and lift it properly and have full extension. All right. If you lack shoulder mobility and stability, that's where a lot of guys get injured, is because they do chest, they do bench press, and they get really tight shoulders, really tight back and chest, and then they lack that overhead press and getting a really good position. So we want to build out mobility and stability with that overhead strength. Okay, that's something to think about. Now, pull-ups. So this is important for your pull-ups, not within the PST, but just strength for your pull-ups. You want to be able to bang out 20 to 25 easy. Now, throw on a 15 to 20 pounds, and you should still be able to do 15 to 20 pull-ups with that weight. Don't be one of those guys who shows up being able to do 10 pull-ups, 12 pull-ups. You need to have that upper body strength, because when you get to the yoke horse, you're going to have to pull your body weight up over and over and over again. So pull-ups are going to be your friend. Getting your body ready for that. 20 to 25, you should be able to do that any day of the week. All right, let's talk about our PST. Now, PST, whether you're going officer enlisted, just kind of forget about that there's a difference in the standards. I want you to just aim for top tier scores. Enlisted or officer, you should be aiming to be the best either way you go. And I want you to focus on getting, you don't have to focus on sub 8s in the CSS. Let's get you between 8:30 and 9 minutes on a 500-yard swim. This is without fins, all about efficiency, so that when you get out of the water and you do the calisthenics, you're not burned out from the swim. All right, all about efficiency. That's what we focus on, getting in a really good glide, making sure that you have proper form so that you're not burning yourself out in that first portion. Swimming CSS without fins takes some technique work, and then you kind of forget about that once you get to buds, because pretty much all the swims you do at buds are going to be with fins on. All right, but you want to dial in that CSS without fins so you can have a solid PST score. Now you go into the calisthenic portions, focus on getting 85 to 95, even 100 perfect form push-ups and sit-ups, and then 20 to 25 pull-ups is the score you want to aim for. And your run, it's a 1.5 mile run at the end, somewhere around 8:30 to 9 minutes is a good time to get. Those are the scores you want to aim for. Now, those are top tier. Those are going to be some high-level athletes you're competing with, and they are good scores to aim for. Now, I know you could be faster or better in certain areas, but remember, the calisthenics, if you lack proper form, they will not count them. So make sure your form on the calisthenics is spot on. We have guys do these, and they send their videos in, and we look at their CSS, their running, and their calisthenics to make sure they have proper form so they can pass the combat side stroke and the run and the calisthenics in the PST, and there's no issues. So do your calisthenics, make sure you have proper form so that if you have 100 reps, they don't take off 30 because you lacked proper form. Make sure you're dialed in. The mindset should be, I should be able to do 2 PSTs in a day and pass both of them. That's where you should be at. If one PST is extremely hard for you, but you passed it, that's a good indicator you got a lot of work to put in front of you. You got a lot of work ahead of you. All right, it's a good little test, but it's really not much compared to what you really need to be focused on for actual buds prep. So those are some things I want you to think about. Also, some skill set work is important, being comfortable in the pool. If you're not comfortable in the pool, if you're not confident in the water, then maybe think about getting yourself there. But if you just hate the water, then maybe you should decide to do a different job, because that is your second home. In the SEAL teams, that's what it is. We go back to the water whenever we need to get away. So drown proofing, 50-meter underwaters. We do ditch and dons. We do mask clearing. We do underwater knot tying. There's a lot of skill sets that we build into our training to make sure that everybody's ready so that when they get to selection, they can perform. It's not about showing up and then being overwhelmed and then trying to learn everything. There are guys that focus on all this stuff and train for it, and there's other guys that don't. And you can see the difference when they arrive. And one is deer in the headlights look, and the other guys are just out there quietly performing and doing what they need to do. Don't be one of those guys who just neglects their skill set work, knot tying, breathing work, learning all the pool work before getting there, because then it's all about being confident. And if you lack confidence, you're going to struggle during selection. So anyways, a lot to talk about right here. I know I went fast, but I want you guys to start thinking about training like a professional now, because ultimately you're not training to be a bud student for the rest of your life. You're training to become an operator. All the stuff you're going to do is part of the job interview, but it's also preparing you to be an operator. So When you go for runs, when you do your calisthenics, when you go lifting, when you do your rucking, all of that is ultimately preparing you to be an operator. So don't let your mindset be, let me just get to buds, let me just get to first phase, let me just get to hell week and second phase. And all you do is you kind of think about that. The journey does not end at buds. That is the job interview. It'd be like going to a job interview and not even thinking about doing the job and not becoming that one thing that you decided to become, right? It doesn't make any sense. If you don't want to become an operator, then don't go through the job interview. You don't stop at buds. That's not where our mindset should end. Now we need to live fully in the present. We need to be fully present during everything we do, each step at a time, and take bite-sized pieces. I'm not saying not to do that, but I don't want you to just your mindset to end at buds. You got to focus on the mission. Why are you doing this? It's ultimately become an operator so you can serve at the highest level, right? It's not to just check the box off buds and say you made it through buds. Nobody really cares. You're focused on becoming a SEAL, becoming an operator, becoming a quiet professional, and serving at the highest level. That's what this is all about. So focus on what are they going to have me do at selection. Now that's how we train. And how I help guys is getting to these scores and mentoring and coaching you along the way so that when you get to selection, you show up and you're ready to perform instead of showing up and being the bottom 5 of your class or just struggling in a certain area. There are going to be things, even if you train for 5 years, there's still going to be things that are challenging, right? There's always something. But if you train really hard and you focus on things that they're going to be asking you to do and testing you on, then you'll be way ahead of everybody else and you'll be more confident when you show up and you have a much better chance of being successful and becoming the thing that you want to become. Making this goal that you have in front of yourself, getting locked on it and actually being successful. Go all in on this. Don't just fill your head with what happens there and hearing all the stories of everybody else. Flush that out. Just make it your own story. What is it that they're going to have me do during the test? What are the tested evolutions? And then why do I want to be a SEAL? When you're there at buds and you're cold, wet, and sandy, you're in surf torture, you're not going to be thinking about jumping out of planes and shooting guns. You're going to be thinking about why you're staying. What's keeping you there? Why are you not ringing out? It's going to be your why. So if you go to buds and you train all these numbers and yet your heart's not in it, you're still going to quit. We see it all the time. So mind, body, heart connection, that's what this is about. And that's how I help guys train as well, because you be the stud of the class and still quit. Happens. So I want you to think about this. Hopefully this is helpful for you. I don't want you just fixate on one little thing I said and said, oh, well, he said this and that's what I'm going to just focus on. There's a lot to this. And I want you to focus on you. You may have a strength in a certain area. You might be running sub 27 minutes 4-mile runs, but you lack confidence in the pool. Well, let's hone whatever is not working for you, right? Let's get you better at these weaknesses so you can show up and perform. Don't be that guy who says, I was this in the past. I had this in my back pocket and I showed up and I was going to rely on that to make it through. You can't just be have one strength and expect that to take care of everything else. You have to be great across the board. So set your ego aside, write down all these things that you need to achieve, these numbers you want to hit, write down the goal numbers you have, and let's get you there. And that's how I help guys prepare. We do in person, I do online, we do Zoom, we do phone coaching, we do all of this. I've got apps developed. We have incredible programming, incredible coaches helping you become better, helping you hit these scores so that you can be successful at the job you decided to do. That's how I want you to be. I want every guy that goes through selection to be successful, but you have to put in the work and you have to want this more than anybody else. Hopefully this has been helpful for you. These are my perspective. This is my perspective on things from my experience going through selection, training myself for selection, being an operator for years, and then being a buds instructor, and then now a coach. These are my perspective on this, and hopefully it helped you. And I just want you to be successful. So go out there, make this your number one, focus on this, be obsessed about you and your mission, your purpose, your calling on your life, and let's go all in and get you trained up.